everyone. We're starting with a bang with some fantastic panelists here today. Peyton, Wolfie, welcome. Thank you for being here. Can we do a little intro? Peyton, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure thing. Peyton Dobbs, partner at Hoxton Ventures. We are early stage seed, pre-seed firm here in Europe, based out of London. Sector agnostic. We've been around 14 years, investing in deep tech, AI, of course, Tech.eu, enterprise all across the board.
And yeah, I'm Wolfie from OpenAI, and I lead the technical side of our startups team. And what that means is that pretty much every day I get to go and work with the best technical founders around the globe. We get hands-on and help them build the best agents, help them really deploy that out into the world. And prior to that, I was a founder myself, so I've been on the startup journey as well.
Fantastic. Okay, my first question, Peyton. So obviously AI is ubiquitous, but as an investor, where do you see the value and where is it missing?
Yeah, so to date, value's been accruing across the kind of chain, but I think if you really look at where the biggest outcomes are, thus far, frankly, it's been the foundational models themselves, the OpenAIs, Anthropics, Mistrals of the world, the hyperscalers, the Googles, Amazons, Metas, compute. Obviously, NVIDIA has become incredibly strategic and has accrued now most valuable company in the world. And then we've seen a few kind of specific end-to-end use cases. You look at legal, obviously Legora, coding, Cursor, companies like Cursor and Lovable, and then we also have theses around services. So kind of what we kind of say software with a service. So we've seen, again, legal and enterprise applications. We have companies like Avantia, which is basically an AI-enabled law firm where a lot of value has been accruing, as well as Cogna, again, in enterprise app development. I think one of the questions here is around long-term durability. And I'm sure folks have seen blogs of what OpenAI has killed with each release. And I think as the foundational models themselves get better and better, you really have to, and I think we'll talk a little about defensibility and what the real moats are, but at least to date, the value has been accruing in these places.
Fantastic. What's your take from a building perspective?
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing for me right now is we're actually seeing value be created across verticals. And I think it's really important to take a step back and actually look at the timeline here because it moves so fast. So it was only in late 2022 that ChatGPT came out and the world took a step back and go, wow, there's something new here. And in 2023, realistically, it was chatbots where we first saw the promise of AI. 2024, coding started to be kind of disrupted, coding workflows were changed. And then 2025 was the year we really started seeing agents get into many different verticals. And what we're seeing coming into 2026 is that those agents are a lot more long-running, can add a lot more value. And so for myself personally, my workflow is entirely changed on the technical side. I use Codex for literally all of my programming now, and it's pretty rare to open a file, which is crazy, but I think that's kind of table stakes. I think most people know that, right? But then if you look kind of at European and UK companies, we have Fixer AI. Their email kind of support agent helps people reply to emails. I think the stat they use is something like 30% faster. And if you scale that across an organization with tens of thousands of people, that means you can do deals fast, you can create a lot of value, and there's a reason their ARR went from 1 to something like 20 million in a year. You have Model ML in the UK doing investment banking agents. You have Legora doing legal. You have Parloa doing customer service. And really the key thing here is there was customer service agents last year, but now those agents routinely pass the Turing test, which to me is kind of crazy. So both on the personal workflow side, but also across verticals, we're really seeing things move from kind of experimentation, this is cool, this might change things, to it really being like a capable agent that can do things end to end. And so I think it's really across verticals we're seeing it.
Absolutely. I would agree with the things that come across my desk. Absolutely. So Peyton, we talk about defensibility. I mean, I think about it now, you can spin up a demo pretty compellingly, you can do a pitch deck, you can make yourself look fantastic on paper. How has your investment thesis changed and how do you look at this in terms of how you invest, particularly when you have people in sometimes very, very similar kind of startups?
Yeah, and this was something from those early days in that ChatGPT moment that, Wolfie talked about, that we debated quite vigorously internally. And I think it's been interesting to see how things have played out. I can tell you what's not defensible, and that is, thin wrappers and legacy enterprise SaaS, right? Those are places where we see value not accruing and not being defensible. Some interesting themes and kind of trends that we see around defensibility. First, foremost, proprietary data sets. So for example, we have a company, Peptone, doing drug discovery that had access to a proprietary data set around proteins that was 6 times bigger than what AlphaFold used in proteins. We have Finster, which is in that investment space that just signed an agreement with FactSet. So they have access to proprietary single source of truth data in financial markets that nobody else does. Physical AI is another interesting place that we see that I think some of the winds have shifted and changed, whereas hardware was maybe not necessarily as in vogue. This is an area I was previously running Nest Labs, EMEA, and running our hardware business at Google. Was not all as fashionable, given some of the cost and from a venture perspective, given just some of the investment that's required. And I think we're starting to see those winds kind of shift in turn as physical AI becomes more and more important. So for us, that looks like companies like Magenta that are doing AI robotics learning, companies like Milvis Advanced, which is actually spun out of Oxford, and is doing synthetic catalysts for platinum and other rare earth minerals.
Amazing.
So you have these places where, wow, the use cases for AI are starting to emerge, and companies like CUSP doing materials exploration, really on the frontier that will be defensible, and others in, again, that AI kind of software world don't have the same kind of defensibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about from a dev perspective? I mean, where are people struggling? And I guess particularly when we look at going from prototype to production.
I think the core part of that has always been winning the trust of the person that you're working with. And if it's an enterprise and you're a startup bringing something new, that's always hard. And then number 2, making sure you're solving an actual problem. We may well talk about it later, but I think, again, we can get caught up in all the things that have changed. But fundamentally, a lot of stuff around startup building is the same. You still need to create value for a customer by solving a real problem. And so one of the things we're seeing a lot of early stage startups do kind of earlier than ever before is actually get engineers into the building with enterprises, so forward deployed engineer type characters. And that really works for a couple of reasons. The first is that you have people in place to help with the deployment. So, if you're going in and working with an enterprise, it's not just kind of giving them product. There's this entire process of change management because there's such new technology.
Yeah.
And actually supporting them with that is critical. But then number 2, and back to what you were speaking about in defensibility, to stay ahead in this world, you need to move at just the most ridiculous speed. And the best way to move at speed is to have a very, very tight loop between you as a builder and your customer and what they need from a technical perspective. And so we're seeing earlier and earlier stage startups actually deploy engineers into enterprises. And instead of pitching their product, you say, let's build this together. I want to custom tailor this to you and learn through the process to build a better product. And who's going to say no to that, right? It's incredibly bespoke to what the enterprise needs, and the startup gets a lot of learnings from that. And the fascinating thing to me is actually quite similar to how I run my team. So when we go and work with startups, we have no intention of just going, here's a model, use it, that's kind of fixed. Our entire purpose is to go and, number 1, support them, make sure they can get the best out of the models, and really ensure they can build world-leading products. But then number 2, co-create with them the feedback that we need to improve our models for them. And I think it's one of the things that if you're kind of a builder in the room right now, like one of the core messages that I really want to make sure you kind of go away with is people underestimate how much impact they can have on OpenAI. Like when we work with a startup and they say, this is what's working, lean into this, your models are amazing for this. But here's an area we would love to see the models improve. My team can work with them to create that feedback, maybe make it quantitative, and then work with our teams to improve on that thing for that startup. And obviously that benefits everyone, but it also means that that startup knows that our models are going to drive their product better and better. And so we do it, the top startups that I see kind of out in the world are doing it as well, just build that very tight feedback loop. And one of the best ways to do that is get technical people in a room, get them working hands-on, and get that flywheel going together.
I love you mentioned that, because I've heard that from startups, actually. They've really commended that as something that's sought out. But given we're talking UK, Europe, I'd love to know a bit about the trends you're seeing, and maybe you can walk us through a little bit about your programs in brief, given that there may be people here that are interested.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think for Europe as a whole, it's just an incredibly exciting time right now. And,
totally.
We were speaking about it beforehand.
We got very excited, didn't we?
I think that Europe has always had incredible technical talent, an incredible research base, incredible academia. But one thing that's changed is really the kind of the fuel to go and build. And so I just see this personally, that every year I go back to Oxford to give a lecture to undergrads. And 4 years ago, I would do that, and afterwards they'd come up to me and say, what was it like working at BCG? How do I get in consulting? And now none of them have any questions about that. They're saying, how can I go and found a company? How can I build? How can I join an early stage company? So we've got this amazing developer base, this amazing kind of research base who now wants to go and build. And I think you see that, right? The UK is in the top 5 market globally for OpenAI developers and subscribers. So we're really seeing a new generation of AI native people come through. And then I think the second thing with that is we've now got proof points of people who can build these incredible, like global leading, not just Europe leading, but global leading AI companies. And for me, the most important part of that is it kind of places this small spark, right? If you're a young person and you see that someone kind of similar to you from the UK, from Europe, has built a company which is dominating globally, that says to you, I can go and do that. And so we're seeing this flywheel. Startups are all about flywheels, whether it's defensibility, getting ahead, staying ahead through some sort of data flywheel, whether it's kind of ambition and the spiral that goes from that. It's really about these kind of small sparks going and then spreading massively. So that's an incredibly promising time. And I think at OpenAI, we look to support across that journey. So on the personal side, tools like Codex, as I said, it's transformed my workflow. But actually, much more importantly, there's a lot of people who before would class themselves as non-technical. What does that really mean? Previously, it meant I can't really build something without someone else's help. And that is just not true anymore. If you have Codex or Lovable or any of these other incredible European companies, you can now build something, even if you weren't a programmer before. And then on the second layer, we have all the work that my team goes and does and supporting the startups hands-on, making sure that whether it's kind of marketing, whether it's the technical side, we can really ensure they're building best in class and go global from day one. But then there's a bunch of ecosystem stuff. I always say I have a younger brother who's 22, and I say if you're ever out of cash in London, you need some kind of meals throughout the week, go to a hackathon every night of the week, because there is just so many AI events going on all the time, and that's amazing. And we go and support that. We make sure that young builders know how to build, they get access to the tools. And then finally, it's back to kind of what I was saying before about the FD type motion. One of the things that genuinely wakes me up in the morning is the fact that I get to go and work with the best founders globally, but crucially UK and European founders, and ensure that their feedback is heard by OpenAI, and we're building models that make sure that European companies can succeed at the highest level. So I think across the entire stack, what motivates me is getting up and making sure we can support everyone from the earliest stage builder or student kind of tinkering with AI to the people building decacorns as well.
And what about you, Peyton, as an investor? I mean, how do you support people now with commercialization, given that it's become, in some respects, easier, but the market has become more complex?
Yeah, it's great. It's very interesting trends, just as Wolfie's talking through, just as we see in the market. Hey, that bar continues to come down in terms of being able to start a company. And I think you've heard Sam talk about the first billion-dollar company to be founded by a single person is not too far, is within sight, right? So I think we will continue to see that bar coming down. Also, just as Wolfie said, there's so much strong academic and research-based talent here in Europe. It's now that commercialization that you're starting to see the proof points come about as we've discussed For us, we help in a few different facets. One, through just strategy and kind of deployment. So we will, of course, have playbooks and best practices, introductions that we're making around what some of those commercial models exist for different of our portfolio companies. Second, around financial, of course, we're investing, but also we're looking to the foundational models and hyperscalers themselves that are very generous with credits, and they want to see this ecosystem supported and built and win. So that's a place that we often help with. And then thirdly, around regulatory and risk mitigation are places that we help with legal advice in terms of setting up optimal structures and helping them kind of navigate if it's jurisdiction or market expansion as they build and grow.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love that you mentioned the single-person company. I was literally reading something on the plane yesterday about that. China is doing a big push for single-person companies, which will be probably, and the next thing I write about perhaps as a deep dive. But okay, so let's look at the other side of this. We've got this great hype cycle. We've got lots of momentum. We've got, the money's there, the tech is there. What's the fastest way for an AI embedded company to lose its moat at the moment?
I mean, for us, as I mentioned earlier, just thin wrappers are not going to sustain themselves in this new world. You see the foundation models getting so good at what they do, also even in specific verticals, that you can't survive that way. That's where I talked about just durability as kind of one of the concerns. Some of the other things we think about and kind of look at when we're talking about durability, again, as distribution. And you look at something like a Hugging Face that just has massive distribution, or large addressable markets, like a Model ML and Finster that are in financial services, or a Legora in law. Those are categories where we want to see people building end-to-end solutions that then begin to have those network effects where they can't be displaced over time. And we want to see founders focused on unit economics. So ultimately, you have to stand on its own. And I think having positive unit economics from very early on is a great signal for us that, hey, you're not paying more for compute than what you're ultimately charging for. In this, we see costs coming down, and just have to be thoughtful around how you're managing and building your product.
Yeah, absolutely. And here we're in London. UK government kicked off their 500 million towards their sovereign AI unit. Any thoughts from you both on that, and how you think it's, the relevance and the dominance and the perspective that, how's it going to play out?
I mean, for us, we love seeing this. We're starting to see kind of national interests and tech merge, right? And companies like Mistral, obviously in France with a lot of national support. Companies in quantum, you're starting to see that become a national interest. And we want to see the UK, again, lead here. And this is one of the ways. Now, one of the questions will be around, hey, can they, just like Wolfie said, move fast enough, move quick enough to keep up with the pace of this industry and this market? That will be one of the kind of critical factors. But it's very compelling if you start to think about, wow, if the government can be not just an investor, but also a customer and drive returns for the public good and public interest. So there really are a lot of synergies here. We think it's incredibly exciting and strategic seeing the government make some of these moves. And I guess one of the questions will be around, hey, can they do it quick enough, fast enough, and pick and choose the right places to invest long term? But we love seeing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's just an incredibly strong signal, right? I think I'm super lucky that every single day I get to talk to founders, both about tech, but also kind of as the relationship evolves about what they really need beyond that. And it basically comes down to obviously funding. They need capital. but now it's access to compute, it's talent, and making sure the talent pathways are there and they can access that. It's being able to go global and compete on a global stage from day one. And this, to me, is an amazing signal that the UK is investing in supporting that. Exactly the different ways that we do that, it's a comprehensive program that we'll end up with. But to me, it's a really, really exciting signal.
Yeah, fantastic. Gee, we just hit the time perfectly. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Peyton Wolfe, for joining me on stage. Absolute
Anytime.
pleasure.
Thank you very
And
much.
Thank you,
they'll be
Kate.
around today, so please come and have a chat.
Thank you.